Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. It's been a long time since I've made any content for this channel whatsoever. It's just been through a lack of enthusiasm and I'm just a lack of time and stuff like that, and time does really does slip away. So I just want to say thank you to the people that have taken time out to watch the videos and and made comments. Some of you, without your comments, I wouldn't be doing this all over again, starting this again, because the comments have been extremely positive. People have been saying that the previous set of tutorials around texture they've gone from nothing to building a full app in texture just through watching my videos and obviously reading the textures documentation. So I'm really grateful for you to take the time out to leave a comment and even watch the video. When I started this journey, the intention was to help as many people as I can, and I never thought I would get any subscribers, and I'm currently at like 324, although that doesn't compete with some of the big players in the iOS space. But for me, that's I never intended to get one subscriber. I just wanted to help people at the end of the day, and hopefully that's what I'll continue to do going forward. So where we left off is nearly 2 years ago. Where we left off in 2020 was August of 2020. We were talking about texture and the UI, asynchronous UI framework that texture is, and we built the Instagram clone. If you've not seen that, I'll leave a link to the series, the playlist, in the description below as well. But my intentions are to kind of shelve that now and move forward with some other topics. We will be covering SwiftUI, but going forward for the next few videos, at least, we'll still be using UIKit. I still think it's very relevant and it's not going anywhere. I know SwiftUI is extremely popular and it has come a long way since August 2020 when I kind of finished off. But I will be covering UIKit, because like I say, it's still relevant. And I will also be exploring other UI frameworks, two in particular. One is pin layout and one is flex layout. I recently used those in an app I built last year, and for the plumbing and heating industry in the UK, and that particular app has done very well. The framework was ideal for what they intended. So we'll bring that. I'll be talking about that in future videos. But as of now, the next set of videos, 2 or 3 videos, will be covering Async Await, and I'll be showing you how I've built a nice scalable networking layer that's easily testable as well. So the next set of videos will be building the network layer and writing unit tests as well. The UI is kind of irrelevant in here, but we will still build one. We'll build one using storyboards and the normal constraints and nibs and stuff like that. So we will build a UI at the end of this, but for the whole purpose of these next set of tutorials is talking about building the networking layer and then talking through that, and then writing a very basic unit test and showing you just how easy it is to write a unit test using this using the method that I'm going to demonstrate in today's video. So the networking layer is mainly using protocols and view models and all that sort of stuff that some of you are probably very familiar with. So with that in mind, we'll just get cracking and we'll start going through what the next set of tutorials are all about. So one of the things I want to just bring up is a few of you mentioned that when you're following along, it would be nice if you had like a starter project so that you could actually follow along and then clone the starter project and then follow along. So in this repository, which I'll leave a link to, there is actually a branch called starter project, and you'll be able to clone that and follow along, and everything will just click into place, hopefully. It's called the Breaking Bad app. We're going to use the Breaking Bad API. because there's a 10,000 requests a day limit. I can't imagine any of us for this particular small project are going to use anything more than that. I don't even think we'll reach 100. So there's plenty of scope for playing around with this if you wanted to take the project further and have a tinker around on your own. So again, the link for this API documentation will be in the description below. There's no API key required. That was another reason why I chose it. So we'll get cracking and start building this out. So what the project that we've got on screen, like I say, is just using table UI kit. I've created an outlet, and on the main storyboard there's just this table view. We're not going to worry about the UI for now. We're just going to focus on building out the networking layer and writing the unit tests. So this video is about building the networking layer, and the next video will be about writing a quick unit test. So this one will be a little bit longer than the next one, and then the final video about piecing it all together and in the UI. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new group. We'll call that network. And then inside here, we'll create another group and we'll call it base. Then I need 3 files, Swift files. One is called HTTP client. The other one is going to be called request error. And finally, the third one is going to be called endpoint. Well, not there. You've got to select the file endpoint, like so. So we'll start with the endpoint first. So I'm going to create a protocol here, and it's going to be called endpoint, like that. And in here, we're going to create some variables. First one is going to be called base URL, and it's of type string. We're going to have one called path, and this is of type string. We're going to have one called method, and this is type request method. So this will complain because we don't have this yet, and also these will gets. Like that. So this will moan because we don't have this ready. So we're going to create an enum. It's called request method. It turns a string. And we're going to create some cases. One's called delete. Delete. The other one is called post. And you kind of get where this is going. This is just your standard HTTP methods. We're going to have another one, put, and another one, get, and finally patch. It's TCH. So that should cover all of our request method scenarios. This what we're doing here is kind of you could use in any project, and the majority of these, the for this particular example, we won't be using half of these. But if you're building a scalable networking layer that you can move from project to project, you could literally drag this out and move it into another project. So that's the whole purpose of doing this now, so that you could just copy and move it to another project. I mean, the only one we're really going to use in this scenario is the get method. But you know, when you're working on a larger scale project, you'll probably use all of those. And then we need to create a var header, and this is a dictionary of string. This is optional as well, because you may not need to provide a header. And again, in this example, we're not going to use that. But again, if you're building it for a larger scale app, you would need to use a header, provide an authorization header, like a API key or something like that, to communicate with your backend. And this is a dictionary of string for the body, and then we do a get like that. So again, this is optional, and we probably won't use the body in this tutorial series either. So that's our protocol done. So anywhere we will use the endpoint, we will have to use these variables, or we'll have to utilize these variables. So I'm going to create an extension now, and extend endpoint, and then we're going to have var base URL. It returns a string like that, and then we're going to put our base URL that we have for our Breaking Bad API. So if we just drag that out, copy, move that back, and put that in a string, paste that there. So that's our base URL. So whatever your service endpoint is called, paste that in there, and then you'll never have to change that. I mean, you might have different endpoints for whether you've got like a testing, a staging, or a production, but you can change. You can change that based on that. You could put some sort of switch statement in there that would return that, and like an API config or some config set in a plist or something like that. But for now, we're just going to return this single string. But if you've got a scenario where you do have a testing and staging, you can set up your environment, like an environment config within your project, and maybe we'll touch on that in a future video on how to set that up, or how I set that up personally. So but yeah, so that's pretty much it. Endpoint's now done. Our next point of call is a request error. So we're going to create an enum, and this will return a type of error, and we're going to have case, decode, case, invalid URL, what else? Case, no response, case, unauthorized, and case unknown. And case unexpected status code, something like that. Then in here we could create a custom message like that, and we return a string, and then we'll do switch self, and then in here we'll do case.decode, and then return our string. Oops. Decode error, and then we'll have another one which will be unauthorized, and you could do unauthorized or something like session expired, like that, and then finally default, and return unknown error, like that. But again, you can change these error message to cater for what your API would expect, you custom messages and stuff like that. So that's kind of the request error stuff done now. And then finally we need to do the actual HTTP client itself. So we're going to create another protocol, and this is going to be called HTTP client. Whoops, like that. And then we're going to need to create a function, send request, and we're going to use generic type here. So we'll have a T decodable, and then we'll pass in some parameters here. So the first parameter is the endpoint, where we want to be hitting, the service we want to be hitting. And then we're going to have a response model. And this is where we're going to pass in our generic. So what we're expecting back from the endpoint, like in our instance, we're going to build a model shortly, which is called character, and we're going to take a look at the JSON lint page and look at the properties that we need to add to our struct. And then we have async. So this is our async await stuff now. So this is going to be async. So this is going to be doing our we're going to hit this, and the code will continue to execute, but we'll be awaiting a response from this send request protocol. That needs to go there, and then we're going to return result type, and it's a type T, and a request error, which is what we've just created. So we're going to create our extension now. HTTP client, like that. Chuck that in there. And now we're going to start building out our actual request. So we have a URL, let URL, type URL and string, and we're going to use endpoint dot base URL plus endpoint dot path. So that's the base URL that we've already created, and then the path. So in our instance, we're going to be, if we drag our Breaking Bad API documentation in, so we've created our base URL, and the first one we're going to return, we're going to use is characters. So we'll use that in a short while, but characters is our first endpoint, which will return us a list of characters. And then here we're going to for some wrap. Oh, not there. Here we're going to for some wrap. People might say, "Oh, what happens if the URL's wrong and it crashes the app?" In theory, your URL shouldn't be wrong. So if it is wrong, then rather than returning nothing or just failing over, it's better to know that your URL is wrong by crashing the app. Well, that's my opinion anyway. It's probably not best. It's probably not the best user experience, but at least if you're using some crash analytics, you'll be able to see that your URL's wrong and get it fixed. So next we're going to build our request. So var request equals URL request, and passing our URL that we've just built on the line above. Oh, and we're also printing out the URL as well, so that you can see in the console when we get to start writing the unit tests and stuff that we're actually calling that. We're actually building the correct URL as well. So here we need to set our HTTP method. So if we use endpoint.method like that, and then we'll also set our headers. All headers is endpoint.header. And now we're going to do an iflet body equals endpoint.body. So because it's optional, we don't want to send this every time and it be null, because because if it's a get or something like that, it'll just throw an error and it will be in a terrible mess. Oh yeah, that needs to be raw value. So yeah, because method is an enum, we need to give it the raw value, which will give us a string value. So whether it's get, post, delete, put, etc., etc. So yeah, back to line 23. We're unwrapping this. We only want to send the body if there is a body. So here we are going to do request dot HTTP body, and then we're going to serialize this into data. You could use you could use encodable. You could again, by all means, clone this, tweak it to how you want to use it. But I just find that using a dictionary of string it's easier. Or you could use string any. You probably would be better off using string any. But yeah, I'm just going to serialize this to data, and that will then set the body. But we're not really going to be doing any post work. We're not going to post anything back to a server. Maybe in the future, I'll use this HTTP client again and into another project, and I'll show you how to use the post side of it. So JSON with object and options, and then here we want endpoint, we want body, and then just provide an empty array there. So that's our body covered there, and now we're going to do the actual await stuff. So we're going to have a do and a catch like that, because our catch will throw the error if need be. So we're going to do let. And with async await, you can return the data, and the response, like that. And then we're going to do try await, and we'll do URL session shared dot data, and we want to look for the one that's throws. And then we're going to use the that's the wrong one. We want to do data. We want the one that throws with request. Is it that one? No. Your session. That one. No, that's weird. Where's that then? We want the one with request. For data for that one. That's the one we want. And nil. Yeah. Don't know why that didn't come up. Anyway, so we've done that. Now we're going to just try and do guard let. We're going to unwrap the response. And we need to try. We got to cast this into a as HTTP URL response, and then if that is failed to if we fail to unwrap, then we're going to pass in a failure, and then this is going to be no response. So if we make the request and we don't get response, or we can't unwrap that response, then we'll just send a failure message back to our where we've made the request with the error of no response. So now we need to do a switch response dot status code like that, and then we'll do a case 200 ... 299. Don't need the space there. So if we get a 200 back, we need to do, and we're going to try and decode our response model now. Decoded response like that, and then do try JSON decoder, decode from, and then we want to do data, response model and data, like that. And then return, if we can decode and the try doesn't fail, then we want to return a success with our decoded data, decoded response. And then we in our catch, if we can't decode the data, we want to send a we want to return a failure, and this will be the decode error. And then finally, we need to cover our 401s. So in a case 401, and then in here we want to return failure, and this is going to be unauthorized, and then we just want to pass it, throw a default, and this will be return error. If we get to here, I guess it would be a unexpected status code, like so. And then finally in our catch here, we want to return a failure, and this will be unexpected status code, because if we're not hitting a 200 or a 401, or we cannot, I'm going to else in that as well. That'll fix that. So if none of this happens, none of this block happens, or we fail to this try fails, for example, then we'll just get an unexpected status code and a failure. And if we build that should build successfully, which is good. So that's pretty much it. So just a quick run through of what we're doing. So we're building our URL here. We are building up a request. We set the HTTP method, and we set the headers here. We try and unwrap the body. So if the body, what we pass in has a body, then we will serialize it to data. And then we'll set our request using the await keyword, the new await keyword, which will just basically fire off something in the system and say, go and fetch this data while the app actually continues to execute, and we'll just wait for that response in a different task. And then once we get response, we'll just throw it back to the main thread, and then away we go. All very similar, but you just don't have those horrible completion handlers, which many people are familiar with. But if you're not, I'll leave a link to my one of my other projects where you can look at the completion handler side of it, and look at how much cleaner the async await stuff is. And some of the cool stuff that you can do with it is really, really good. There's loads of good tutorials on YouTube that go into some of the other features that this await stuff, the async await stuff, can do, like structured tasks, unstructured tasks, stuff like that. So if I find any, I'll definitely link them in, that you can follow on from this and watch those as well, because they are really, really worth watching. Anything that Apple have done with WWDC as well is definitely worth taking a look if you've not done so already. So that's kind of it for the networking layer. So now we are going to create a service. So in your app, you'll probably have multiple services. So it may be like user service or payment service, or if you're using like third-party payment providers that are outside of like in-app purchases and stuff. You may have like a basket service, like if you're shopping at an e-commerce app, so this is where you would build. So I'm creating a group now, which is called service, and this is where we're going to build up our service. So we're going to call this character service, and where we will fetch our characters, our list of characters. So for this, we are going to have an enum. It's going to be called character endpoint. Can't spell character. Endpoint, like so. We're going to have a case, get all characters. And then we're going to have an extension, and that is going to be a character endpoint. Oops. And that's also going to override, or is going to adhere to the protocol of endpoint. So here we're going to create a var path like that, and our path is going to be switch self. And we are going to have case dot get all characters like that. And then, so if you had a different, get character by ID, for example, and then in here you had ID, and it was an int. For argument's sake, you would go return. Let's call up, what is our endpoint? You would have, so this one here is characters. So that's our endpoint there. So this one would be characters like that. And then you'd have get case dot get character by ID. Let ID like that. Go in here and then return. What did they call it? Characters. And then they want the slash passing the ID like that, and you'd do something like that, and then you'd build all your endpoints would be all your endpoints would get built up in that fashion. We're not using that in this instance, but you kind of get the idea. And let's just click that and cheat and build the rest out. So our request method, we would do another switch statement of self like that. And then we'll return, this will return get like that. And then again, if you had a post, you would return your posts, your deletes and stuff, depending on all your endpoints that you got here. We don't need any headers here, so we're just going to return nil. And same for the body. But again, you get the idea. If you had an endpoint that needed a body, you would create your endpoint. Well, I'll just give you an example. So if we use case get something by ID, and it was a post, you would do case get something by ID like that, and you returned dot post like that, and then you didn't need a header, and then you did switch self like that, and then here you return get all characters, you would return nil like that, nil. And then in here you would return some dictionary ID 2, 1, whatever, 1 like that. You would do that, or you could actually pass in the value and pass in, or you could pass in the actual values that you needed to add to the body. I mean, if you had a scenario where you needed, you wouldn't just pass in an ID, you'd pass in a whole bunch of parameters. You could fundamentally pass in your object here, like something by ID, and it would be object like that, and then it was object blah. We don't have that, so it's going to complain, but you get the idea. And then there's an extension where you can convert your object as dictionary, and you would just convert it to a dictionary in there. So you'd have your request object, pass it in, and then pass it as a dictionary in here in the body, and then away you go. So let's get rid of that. But you kind of get the idea of where this is going. For now, that returns nil. I've eaten a bracket somewhere. That one there. Yeah. So that's kind of how you do it. You do your body. I mean, this. If you needed to pass a non-string, you would make this string any. But in this example, we're just using string because we're not actually going to use a body. But like I said, this is for giving you the ability to move it from this project to your next project, which you would have a larger list of services that you communicate to a back end. But yeah, so anyway, getting back to this is now done. And then here we're going to just create a new file. It's a Swift. We'll call this home view model. Create a new group. Call that view model. And then in here we're going to create a couple of protocols. And this is going to be called home view model output. Any object. Like that. And then we're going to have func content received. And this is going to be our model, an array of character, which we haven't done yet, so we'll do that next. New group, model, like that, new file, character, like that. Now we're going to need JSON lint. Make that window a bit smaller. And drag this over here a wee bit. Like that. So we're going to need this lot here. Can we drag that over a bit more? Over there. Yeah, cool. Make this window smaller. Cool. Okay, so we're going to create a struct called character. Like that. It's codable. And then we need a let jar ID is a int, and then we gonna need an enum coding coding keys like that, and this is going to be string coding key like that. And then in here, because this is using the char underscore, we're going to have a case char ID, and this is going to be equals char underscore ID. So it knows to map that char ID to our char ID here. And then what else? Other properties do we need? We need let name, which is a string, and then let birthday, which is a string. Probably won't use all of these. Occupation. Oh, we might do. Which is an array of string. Let image. This is probably a URL, which is that's a string. Let status is a string. Let nickname is a string. Let appearance is an array of integers. Let portrait is a string. Let category is a string. Make sure I've spelled all of those right. Nickname, appearance. Yeah, looks all right to me. I'm not worrying about the Better Call Saul stuff, but yeah. So that should be that. And now we need to get rid of this error. We need to add all of these other properties to the enum, so that it just makes it conform. Occupation, image, status, nickname, appearance, portrait, and category. That should do it, and that should go away shortly. Like so. Cool. So let's get back to our view model. So now we're expecting an array of characters. We have our model which we've created. So we have our view model output protocol, which when the content's received, we'll do that. And then here we could do func request failed. So if it errors, failed like that, and we're going to pass in our error message back, which is of type string. And then what we need to do now is we need to create another protocol. This one is going to be called home view model serviceable, like that. And here we are going to go func get all characters, like that. And this is going to be async. It's going to return us a result of character and request error, like so. And that's kind of the two protocols that we need for this particular class, that we're going to create now. So class is going to be home view model, like that. This is going to comply to HTTP client, and home view model serviceable, like so. And we need a var. We need to create a var output. This is more for the view stuff, and the testing actually as well. And then this will be like that. This needs to be weak as well, because it's kind of acting like a delegate. And then we need to create a function, func fetch characters, like that. then we need to create a task. So this is one of the new things that's in Async Await. So anything that you need to use Async Await for, you need to wrap in a task. So anything where it's going to fire off to another thread, to a background thread, you need to create a task for it, and then you'll call the await keyword inside that task. Because if you don't provide the task, then this would have to then become a sync, and then it will go further and further up the chain. And you don't want that to happen. You want it to stop somewhere. So that the best place to do it is here, or wherever you deem necessary within your project. But in here, we're gonna do it here. We're gonna use it here. So we're gonna create let result, and then await, and then get all characters, and then we do our switch statement, switch result, and then we do case dot success let model, like so, and then we're going to use our output dot content received, and pass our model back. So this will update the view. I need to do self there. So this will update the view, and then finally we need to handle the failure side of it. Whoops, need a space in there like that. And then we're going to do self.failure, and this is going to be let error colon, and then do self.output.request failed, and then pass our error string back .localized, or we could do raw value, and that will just pass us back our string raw value, or you could do the .localized description like you would normally. Like that, but we'll just pass the raw value back. So as you can see, it's complaining here, and we need to sort that out now. So let's just create mark helper, and then so we're going to use the internal keyword here because we don't want to access this from outside this class, and this is going to be func get all characters, and then here we need to do our return, whoops, not result, return, await, using the await keyword again, send request. So our endpoint is going to be character endpoint dot not character. It's going to be endpoint dot it's going to be character endpoint dot get all characters. That's the one. And then our response model is going to be of type character, like that, dot self. So if you remember, our get all characters is here, and then our response and our model is going to be an array of character, and then that should be fine. What's this moaning about? Turn localized description there. That should stop that error. Yeah, cool. Okay, so that's that. Then in our view controller, just for testing purposes, we're going to in our view did load, we'll create a private func setup main, like so. And then we can call our, no, in actual fact, we'll write the test. And then you can see our API running. So we won't do any of the view, we'll just see the API running. So we're going to write the test. So for this, we're going to do a var expectation, like that, and then this is XC test expectation, like that. That's optional. And then var character, like that, and then we'll call this character response, and then character, like so. We'll have teardown, TAR down, like that, and then character response equals nil. So when the test is done, we null that out. And then we're going to do func test API integration, like so, and then here. So here we're going to create our view model, instance of our view model, and then this is called home view model. Then here we're going to do view model dot output equals self, and then view model dot fetch all characters, so we make our request. Then the expectation, we want to do expectation open bracket description, and this would be fetch characters, like that. And then we're going to do a wait. We'll do a timeout of 2 seconds. I mean, your API should be returned quicker, but this is like an open API. I don't know how quick it will be. That's complaining because we're not adhering to the protocol, but we'll silence that shortly. So we're going to do a do and a catch here, because we want to fail the test if we hit the catch. So we do XET fail message catch do failed, whatever. You can put your own message there, but yeah. So let result equals try, and then we do XET unwrap. The thing we want to unwrap is our character response, like that. And we're just going to leave that there for now, and then here we're going to just click that and move this little lot down here. We're not in a real world test you would cater for 400 as well. So you could test this request failed. This instance, we're not going to do that. We'll look at adding an alert view or something like that in when we build the UI. But we're just going to check to make sure that our API receives the content. We get response of the content back. And if we don't, we can debug it together. And then here, we need to do a character response. And because we're expecting an array back, we're going to base it on this. So this is the actual response we get back from the server. So we know that we're going to do a test to make sure that our character's name, the first character we receive back is Walter White. So we're going to do model.first, and that will give us a first in the array. Obviously, if this was to ever change, then the test would fail, and then you could, if you're expecting a certain order, it's alphabetical order or something like that. If the test was to fail, then you could go to your server guys and say, hey, has anything changed? Our unit tests have failed or something like that. If you were running a CI/CD, that every time you push to a particular branch, whatever you're using, whether it's like Bitrise or App Center or something like that, your unit test would fail. It would flag up, ping you an email and say the unit test has failed. And then you could go in and look at the logs and say, well, why has this failed? Oh, it's because we no longer receive this in alphabetical order. It's like the reverse or something like that, in a random order. And then you could go to your server devs and say what's changed, if they haven't already communicated that with you. So now we've got our model. We've set the model. We've set the response. We need to tell the expectation that it's been fulfilled, like that, and then we need to set our expectation to nil, like that. So the moment of truth, we're going to run this shortly. We're going to do xc test, xct assert. We want to do an equal here, equal. So we want to assert, get rid of that bit there. We want to assert that result dot name is equal to this. So we're going to copy this here. You could do any test here. You could say like the character ID or the the nickname or any of these properties that you're expecting back from your server. So now if we just command U, replace, it will start running the test. Hopefully, if everything's gone to plan, then we will be and it failed. Exceeds 2 seconds. So let's make that a bit longer then. No. So we've got a failure somewhere. So why is that failing? Let's have a look at fetch characters. Might not even get a success. Result. What does result give us? It's a failure. Did we actually characters? Decode error. Okay, so my model is wrong somewhere. So let's go back and have a look at the model. Char ID. I spelled anything wrong? Birthday, occupation, IMG. Any of these null? I wonder if any of these are null. Optional. Nickname. Appearance. Just copy paste. Status, nickname. Looks like I spent portrait wrong. No? Maybe. Let's try again. Maybe it's a spelling. Maybe it's a typo. I don't know why I did that. I need to do this. Go back to the tests. Yeah, that was it. It was a typo. Stupid. So anyway, as you can see, the test has passed. If it would have passed first time if I knew how to spell as well. So yeah, we don't need to make that any longer. Keep that back to 2. And if we run the test again, we should be successful. So yeah, just a typo there. Stupid. Well, it's not stupid. Well, stupid from my point. But yeah, so anyway, this is kind of like a TDD as well, because we've written the code and now we want to test it and go from there. So we know our unit test is going to work. So in the next video, we can start building out the UI and start making it look, start making it appear in the screen here. But yeah, hopefully you have found that of use. So we give you a quick run over again. This network layer consists of an HTTP client, which we wrote from scratch. There's a few things you could probably tweak. Like I said, like this endpoint, you could make this type string any. I've just made it string for this example. And then you would obviously have to change that in here. Maybe if we do build out some sort of app from this, now that we've written it and wrote the unit tests, we could do a get that takes a parameter. So I'll go through the API documentation in more detail and go from there, and then see what other endpoints that we could use. So as you can see, this is a really scalable and a nice way of handling all your endpoints. So you could have, like in this instance, we've got a character endpoint. You may have like authentication, that handles like session tokens and just authorization, like how you log in. You may have a user endpoint that does multiple things like update user, create user, etc. So you could list all these services out, and that's pretty much all you would need to do. There's no completion handlers. There's nothing like that. And as you could see from this view model, it's very straightforward. You create your task. We will briefly go over a main actor, and in the next video, because we're going to be using UI stuff there. But hopefully, you can see this is of some sort of value on a larger scale app. It makes it very straightforward and very easy to monitor where all the different services, because as a project gets bigger, you add more and more services. It can be quite tricky to keep track of what services do what and all this, that, and the other. I mean, that's partly down to the developer to document it and all that sort of stuff. But using Async Await makes it just a lot easier, because you're not having to worry about completion handlers and stuff like that. And you can do like inline stuff. So you could do another one like result 2, and then you could like do await, and you could get. So if you were doing a login thing, you may need to like go and get a token from your back end, and then go and use that token to then go and fetch the user and stuff like that. You may not get the entire user object on authentication. You may just have to go and get a JWT first, and then after that, once you've got the JWT, you then pass it on to go and get a user. So Async Await does that. So rather than having like your request and then nesting the next request in there, and you could go like 4 or 5 deep, here you can actually get access to properties and then pass that in all on one after the other. So it's really powerful, and it's going to make code so much easier to read and understand once it starts getting out into the field, because like I say, it was only released just last year, and they've added backward compatibility for it. So we'll continue building this app. So in the next video, we'll be doing the UI. It's going to be very basic. We're going to use segues and storyboards and stuff like that. But hopefully you've got an understanding of how Async Await kind of works. And if I haven't covered anything, like I always say, leave a comment in the description and I can go over it more in the next video. But yeah, we've got an API. It's fully unit tested, other than the error. But you could easily write another expectation and test and test the failure side of it, or make a 400 or whatever. So you've got the two scenarios. So you've got a good test and a bad test, and make sure it passes and fails. But yeah, like I say, if you feel I've missed anything or I haven't covered enough in detail, then please leave a comment below and I will go into it further. Hopefully this has added value and you've found a really nice way of building a nice API REST client. And it's easy to understand, because networking is very daunting for when you just first start out. And I think people that are new to Swift or just starting with Swift, who have got a little bit of an understanding but not very confident in building in doing the networking side of it, I think using this method with Async Await is going to make it much easier for people. So I hope you liked the video. If you have, please give it a like, and if you please check out previous videos as well. I know that it's been like 2 years almost since I've recorded between this one and the previous one, but please check out the previous tutorials. And if you've got any ideas for future videos, please leave us a comment, and I will do my very best to build something that you all want to see, because that's the whole purpose of it. It's not about me, it's about what you want to see and what you want to me to cover. I'm probably thinking about doing some database stuff in the future as well, but again, I'm waffling and we're talking about future stuff. Let's just focus on this. So the next video is going to be building the UI, like I already said. And yeah, just don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and hopefully I will see you all in the next video. Bye for now.